Greetings. This is Clifton Muhammad with National Network View, the Al-Asa Report, commentary on the time and what must be done. Today, we'd like to bring on a special guest, but before we bring the guest on, we want to talk a little bit about the Al-Asa Report. It's pulled from, actually, when you hear Al-Asa, that is in Arabic for the time. We pull from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's monumental series on YouTube called The Time and What Must Be Done. And we build our current events around, of course, the words of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Go to YouTube and type in The Time and What Must Be Done, and you can get plenty of information on those, on that monumental series. Today, we pulled a topic that a lot of people talk about but don't put enough light on, and that is our indigenous people and the land that they originally owned. And today, we thought we would bring on a brother that would give a good perspective of that. Brother Abel Muhammad, Student Minister Abel Muhammad from Chicago. Assalamu alaikum, my dear brother.
Wa alaikum salam, brother. Pleasure to be and honor to be on here with you and your viewers this afternoon.
Man, praise be to a God. Praise be to a God. Praise be to Allah. So excited to have you here. The network is excited to have you present with us. We want to go right into the subject of our indigenous people and the land. After revisiting the history of course, Black and brown people, it's something the treatment of course, the brown people, the red people, us as Black people in America is very similar. But there's some things that I want to lift before I go into actually the ownership and the original owners. I noticed that there's a lot of language used in terms of describing our people. And when they talk about our brown brothers and sisters, they call them aliens, they call them un-American. And can you dispel that myth of how they name call our people? And what is the reason behind that? So we can kind of paint this picture so our people can understand it a little better.
You know, dear brother, that is what the enemy has done everywhere they go on the planet. They rename in their conquest and colonization the people that they find there so that the people don't have a true history of who they are because they're misidentified. Because the enemy not only erases the history by burning the books, killing the griots and the elders and the chiefs and the leaders who orally would even carry that history, then it leaves a people without a knowledge of themselves. And they know that there's a natural thirst and desire in human beings to know who they are, and they would go and begin to investigate, who am I?
Yes, sir.
So instead, they give a false identity to each people. They go into one area and they call those people Africans. They go into another area and they call those people Orientals. That was the term that they would use. They go into another area, they call them by whatever names, pygmies. They call them not even by their own tribal names. They come up with a title for them: Hispanic, Latino, Caribbean. These things which are not the natural or original names of the people. And they do this in order to divide the people so that we won't know our connection to one another and our own history in the world. And this allows them to use us for their purposes. And it does something even more wickedly wise. It has us take our origin from them and our interaction with them as the beginning of our civilizations. Wow. So it's on many levels how it damages our people. So we don't even believe or have a real existence before our interaction with Caucasian people based on their history of what they've taught us. And that's why we thank Allah for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who has taught us the true knowledge of who we are. You know, even calling ourselves by colors, that is not something we did in our ancient history.
Right.
There's always been the darker people of the planet, but we had nations and tribes that we were in, and we called ourselves by those names, and we knew one another by those names. But now today, there's so much confusion, and that's the ultimate aim of the enemy, to confuse us. Because once we have knowledge, that knowledge with understanding empowers us to look at circumstances and change them.
So just a follow-up question with that. What is the proper way that we as Black men and women address our brown brothers and sisters? Because you gave those different names. Right. You gave the word Hispanic. You gave Latino. What's the proper way? Can we just say indigenous? What's the proper way to address our Mexican brothers and sisters?
You know, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan taught us that the best language is to use the language that God gave us. And he identified us as original people. We are the original people, whether you're talking about North America, Central America, what is called the Caribbean, South America, Australia, the Far East, the Near East, the Pacific Islands, the North Pole, the South Pole. The people who you find there are the original people, part of the original nation of the planet. So the best title is to use the title that God has given us, which is original. You may originate in what is called Africa, but it's part of the same nation of original people. I may originate in what is called North America, but it's part of the same nation. Some may originate from that part called South America or Central America. And again, these are names that are given to us by our enemy. That's not what we called any of these places. So we have to go back to the root. And at the root is that we are the original and aboriginal people, meaning from the original people of the planet Earth, and no one will reject being original.
On that note, when you talk about going back to the roots, can you paint a picture for our viewers of what it looked like before we were colonized? What did it look like in terms of our brown and red people? You know,
yes, sir.
I did a little research and I heard and I seen a little bit about how you know, we were some of our people were enslaved, and then they was indefinitely indebted
right.
to the slavery. So can you break that down, you know, just and
Yes,
kind of summarize it for us?
Yes, sir. You know, it's the same thing that the enemy did everywhere they went on the planet. They first took from the native people, wherever they went, the knowledge that they could of how to survive in these climates. And we offered it to them because that's our way. We've never been selfish, you know, in that way where we don't offer what is known, because what is known doesn't belong to us. It's what has been given to us from the Creator. So we offered that to another human being that we saw coming. We did not know that their desire was conquest, because we didn't have conquest in that way. We didn't have enslavement in that way. We didn't have the criminal mind that came from Europe to the Western Hemisphere or into Africa. So what you have happening is, in a lot of these instances, we were living in very high civilization. We were scientists, we were doctors, we were teachers, we were engineers. And some may say, how could they be engineers? Well, it wasn't a witch that built the pyramids. It was not ancient aliens that built a pyramid. It was the original people with knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, and high mathematics and science. It was not us praying those buildings into existence. It was a prayer to the Creator to give us the knowledge of how to build, how to create these huge structures that even to today, the enemy does not understand how they were built. So what you were looking at before was a civilization of high intellect, high science, high mathematics, and high spirituality, because everything that we saw was based on the principle as above, so below. So we looked in the heavens and saw the arrangement of stars and the alignment of stars, and then we built structures on the earth that paralleled what we saw in the heavens. That wasn't by accident, that wasn't by hope, that wasn't by wish or by some spell. That was by study, science, and mathematics, and the organization and unity of the people.
Wow, it's amazing you mentioned that, because one of our graphic designers with the network found this beautiful image, and he put the our promotions together with this beautiful image. So it took me right back to what you were saying about the structures and how you know, these facial expressions and things actually you know, it identified who we were. So that's
right.
a beautiful point.
That's right.
In terms of the border, how we are how Mexico is broken up, and of course how the Indians were pushed west and given these false treaties, these lies told to them about how they would get their land back and they would have access to all of this. What now? You experienced Standing Rock. what's the sentiment of our peoples? People are trying to come in from, of course, Mexico. Our indigenous people are trying to get their land back because there's a lot of stuff going on with the land.
That's right.
What is considered justice for our people?
You know, it's what was originally promised. You know, the lands that are today the southwest of Mexico, you know, and the great really leader and great researcher, Reyes Lopez Tijerina, may Allah be pleased with him, who passed several years ago and was a friend of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, but he was from Mexico, or his family was from Mexico. He researched and he found the original treaties of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which was the land grants that were supposed to be given back to the Mexican people. But, you know, without going into a super long history lesson, it's not any different than the treaties that were given to all of the tribes that were in the Southwest, whether they be the Hopi or the Lakota or the Apache, just to name a few of them, the Pawnee, those who were moved from the east to the west and promised certain lands, but today they are still being held by the federal government with the promise that one day you will get them. So justice would be to give to the people what is theirs, not in terms of ownership, because we don't see ourselves as owning the land, but as caretakers of the land. This is our responsibility, our obligation. That's why you saw the brothers and the sisters fighting at Standing Rock. It wasn't because of some mineral richness that they wanted or oil that they wanted. No, they knew that they had to protect and preserve the sanctity of the water of that land. That's their duty and responsibility, not as owners, but as caretakers. And that would be justice. And that would go a long way in righting many of the wrongs, is to just make their word their bond. But we know that that's not the case, because there's over 500 treaties that you can look at in Washington, D.C. at the Native American Indian Museum, all of them broken by this enemy. Wow. So why would we expect them to now make their word their bond? But that would be justice, and they would receive something of benefit from the Creator for helping to restore balance through that act of justice. But I don't believe that they would do it, but that would help solve some of the problem, because we would be able to then treat the land and heal the land so that we would have better soil and better water from which the people could provide their necessities.
My final question, Brother Abel, you know, we desire as Black men, Black people that are descendants of slaves.
That's right.
And our forefathers, obviously, may Allah be pleased with them. We have the desire to work with our red and brown people. However, the enemy, we know how he works. He finds a way to drive a wedge between that unity and the programs that we have to bring our people together. What can we do more of as Black people, even as brown, red, Chicano, Latino, whatever whatever banner you may be under? What can we do to bring our communities together and avoid and disregard what the enemy is doing on a regular basis to drive a wedge? You know, you mentioned in the last lecture you were speaking at last Sunday about the strife that was unfortunately in Chicago.
Right.
What is your message to our people?
You know, our message is consistent with what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has taught to us through the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And it's a principle in the Holy Quran that whenever anyone, especially our enemy, brings you information, and they control information in their world, we should look carefully into it and not believe what they're telling us about our brother, believe what they're telling us about our sister. You know, in the Black community, in the brown, in the red community, we're too quick to believe the enemy in their words, act off of that misinformation and injure one another. And that injury then makes us look at each other with a crooked eye and never look at the source of the information that led to our injury for the cause of what is happening to us. So my appeal would be that we have to, just like you and I are doing right now, we have to do more of this coming together to just talk, not with the media, not with the press, not with cameras, not at a big event, just sit and talk with one another and get to know one another, that we may be directly linked to one another and allow no one to be a go-between between us. That when somebody says the Mexicans are doing, we should investigate that and see where are you or that. We should not just take their word on it. We should go in and let's go sit with the blacks. Let's go sit with the natives. Let's go sit with the Indians and not follow one person who doesn't have a source, who doesn't bring a witness, who brings no evidence, only words and false promises. And that is what has been the methodology of the enemy that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has taught us about since their existence 6,000 years ago, was to come in amongst the original people, telling lies, causing us to murder one another and argue with one another, which then leads to the physical conflict. And they have not changed to this very day. Almost everything that I investigated that was spread on social media as the cause of the fighting, all of it was truth mixed with falsehood.
Wow.
One thing that started as legitimate, and then by the time you heard the story, that's not what the truth of it actually was when you go to the core of it. But in the midst between the truth and the lie, it's full of our people being injured physically, emotionally, and spiritually, while the enemy continues to rule and mock us because he knows all he has to do is start a rumor, and we don't have and have not yet developed the love or the courage that instead of following off on their, banter and on their suggestion, evil and wicked, that they whisper to us, we don't have yet the love and the courage to go to one another and say, hey, is this true? I heard such and such. And we know that if we did that, we could really heal and unify our people, which is only to the enemy's demise, not because we wish to do anything to them, but that is what they fear because they know good and well what they did to all of our people. And their greatest fear is that we might unite and do to them what they've done to us. But that's not even in our heart to do that to them. All we want is justice and peace.
Praise be to Allah, man. We really appreciate your time, Student Minister Abel. Man, this has been a beautiful discussion. And like you said, we have to continue having these discussions with our people so we can understand one another even more. And of course, avoid all of the speculation and propaganda that causes us to be divided. Again, thank you on behalf of National Network View.
Thank you.
Bro, again, we definitely appreciate your time. And we want to bring you back. There's another one of our reporters that wanted me to ask you openly about coming back. So inshallah, you'll be able to come back.
It would be my honor. Whenever you need and whenever we can, I'll be honored to offer what we can from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to help our people to heal and to help our people know the time and what must be done.
Thank you, sir. Check out Brother Abel. He's usually speaking on Sunday at noi.org. His beautiful message last week, of course, with our national assistant, Brother Ishmael Muhammad, spoke very well last week. Check out that lecture on noi.org, and we look forward to seeing you again, Brother Abel. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
This is Clifton Muhammad with National Network View.